Before we dive in, just a quick reminder, this video is the second part of the story. If you haven't watched the first one yet, it's already on the channel. I'd really suggest starting there so you don't miss any of the details or surprises. Now, let's jump in, because things are about to get even more emotional. The truth finally caught up with me that day. I was sitting on a bench with Jack by my side, and I told him everything about Robert, about Harold, about the secret that had shaped my whole marriage and even my role as a mother. Jack didn't judge me. He just listened, his eyes full of quiet understanding, like he knew how messy life could get. When I finished, he asked softly, "So, what will you do now?" I looked out at the lighthouse, standing tall after centuries of storms and sunshine, and I said, "I'll keep going. I'll keep writing my letters, keep traveling, keep living while I still can. Michael will have to decide for himself whether he wants to forgive me. I can't force him." Jack nodded and poured us each a glass of wine. He raised his glass and said, "To the truth. No matter how hard it is." "To the truth," I agreed. And we clinked glasses as the sun dipped behind the lighthouse, painting the sky in fiery colors. My mind went back to the letters I still needed to write, one for Michael, telling him the whole story, in a way I couldn't always say face to face. One for my grandchildren, sharing little pieces of myself they might not get to hear in person. Even one for Robert, though he'd never read it, just so I could finally make peace with my past. And maybe one for Jack, the man who came into my life when I least expected it and asked for nothing but the present moment. "Ready to go back?" Jack asked, helping me stand. "Yes," I said, slipping my notebook and pens into my bag. "Ready for the next chapter?" That's what life felt like now, not decades stretching out ahead, but chapters, small, precious chapters I wanted to fill with honesty, courage, and joy. The lighthouse would still be there after I was gone, guiding others, but for now, I was still here, alive, awake, and finally true to myself. Not just the keeper of secrets anymore, but the writer of my own story. Our journey had taken us to the little town of Kennebunkport, a postcard perfect place with white wooden houses, neat gardens bursting with blue hydrangeas, and antique shops that felt frozen in time. I parked my trailer by the river, where I could watch fishing boats drift in and out of the harbor. Jack tied up his boat nearby, and just like that, we found our home base. 10 days slipped by. I spent my mornings wandering through bookstores and cozy little cafes, while Jack fixed up his boat or went fishing. We'd meet up for lunch, then spend the afternoons sailing or simply sitting together on a cliffside, talking about everything and nothing at all. One afternoon, Jack walked into the trailer holding an envelope. "Mail for you," he said. "The manager said it came yesterday." I knew that handwriting right away. She'd even sealed it with her usual owl sticker. "News from home?" Jack asked as he put the kettle on. He already knew I always chose tea over coffee in the afternoons. "Yes, from Sarah," I said, carefully opening the envelope. Inside were a few photos and a letter. The first photo showed Michael in his restaurant, dressed in his chef's uniform, giving that little half smile that reminded me so much of Harold. The next was of my grandkids, Tommy and Amber, building a sandcastle in some park. The third one stopped me cold. An old photo of Robert in his 20s, leaning against his red Mustang, a cigarette hanging from his lips. "You okay?" Jack asked, noticing the look on my face. "It's complicated," I admitted, setting the photos down and unfolding the letter. It began, "Dear Mom, I hope this letter finds you well and enjoying your travels. The photos you've been posting on Instagram are amazing. Who would have thought Teleanor Thompson, Jane Austen expert, turning into a travel influencer at 67. Alan helps me keep up with your posts. You know I'm hopeless with technology." Michael found the letters. "I think he's already reached out to you." "I'm sorry, didn't realize they were mixed in with the things I saved from the house. He showed up here one night, devastated and furious. I've never seen him like that, Mom. Not even when Dad died." We talked for hours. Michael had so many questions, and for the first time, things finally started making sense to him. He asked why Dad always felt a little more distant with him than with me, why you were always so protective, and why he never really looked like anyone else in the family. Finding out the truth hurt him deeply, not just because of what it was, but because of all the years of silence. All those times he asked questions and only got half answers, left scars. Still, I noticed something else in him, to relief. It was like a heavy weight he'd been carrying his whole life finally had an explanation. When I showed him Robert's photo from the envelope, Michael just stared at it for a long time. Then he whispered, "I have his eyes. He asked if you had contact info for Robert's family, not because he wants drama, but because he wants to understand more about where he comes from, about who he is. As for me, Mom, I'm holding up. Of course, I worry about you, but Alan has been amazing. His tests came back clear again 5 years cancer. That's a blessing, in the middle of all this. Tommy was asking about you yesterday. He said he misses your stories about the old days. Amber's busy with photography now. I think she got your gift for noticing little details. And Michael, he'll be okay. It'll take time, but he's tougher than we ever gave him credit for. By the way, who's the gray-bearded man in your photos with the boat? You've got stories you still haven't told me. Eleanor Thompson. I folded your letter and wiped away a stubborn tear. Hard news? Jack asked gently, setting a hot cup of tea in front of me. Not exactly, I said. Complicated, like most things in life. My son's just learning the truth about where he comes from. Jack nodded. And is that good or bad? Both, I admitted. The truth usually is painful and freeing at the same time. I showed him Robert's photo and explained. Jack studied it and asked, "Do you see your son in him?" "Yes," I said quietly. "The same eyes, the same stubborn jaw." "I understand why you kept the secret," Jack said, "but I also understand why your son needs to know." "What should I do now?" I asked. Jack sipped his tea, thinking, "What do you want to do?" I stared out the trailer window at the sea, always moving, just like life. "I want to give him space. Then, maybe, tell him my side of the story if he's ready to listen." "That sounds like a good plan," Jack said. We sat in silence for a while, the sound of seagulls and wind filling the air. Then Jack smiled. "You know, you've become a bit of a celebrity around here." "What?" I laughed. "The lady with the blue trailer, the professor who left everything behind to live on the road. The younger campers are fascinated. They've even found your Instagram." I shook my head, laughing. "My students would never believe it." Dr. Thompson, who once spent a whole semester analyzing Pride and Prejudice, now living in a trailer, and involved with a bearded sailor. Involved, Jack teased. "Is that what people call it these days? How would you describe it?" I asked, grinning. He took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. Two ships that weren't supposed to meet but somehow found the same harbor. A poet and a sailor, dangerous mix. Then he leaned across the table and kissed me softly. "What do you say we sail to that little island tomorrow?" he asked. "There's a seal colony there, and if we're lucky, maybe whales. They've been coming close to shore this week." "Whales?" I laughed. "You promised me whales when we first met. And Jack Peterson always keeps his promises," he said with a wink. That night around the campfire, I listened to other travelers' stories. A retired couple who sold everything for life in an RV, a young woman photographing lighthouses for her book, a man who left his corporate job after nearly dying of a heart attack. Every one of them running from something, or searching for something just like me. "The sea teaches us many things," the heart attack survivor said as the fire crackled. "That storms are unavoidable, that change is constant, and that everyone needs a safe harbor. But most of all, it teaches us that no matter how small our boat is, we can still set sail." His words stayed with me. My time may be short, my boat's small, but I can still sail. Before dawn, Jack and I pushed off into the dark water, the second chance we'd been given carrying us forward. He'd packed a basket with coffee, fruit, and sandwiches. The sea stretched wide ahead of us, endless, steady, alive. Wrapped in a blanket against the cool morning air, I watched the shoreline fade, city lights still flickering behind us. Jack adjusted the sails and grinned. "Ready for your first whale-watching trip?" "Born ready," I laughed, my heart thumping with the kind of excitement I hadn't felt since childhood. As the sun rose, painting the sky in soft pink and gold, I realized how alive I felt. Even the sick parts of me seemed to hum in rhythm with the wind, the water, and that perfect moment. We soon reached a rocky little island, just like Jack promised, where seals were sprawled in the sun. Their slick bodies shined like wet stones, some lifting their heads to look at us while the pups splashed in tide pools. I laughed. "They're like sea dogs, clumsy on land but so graceful in the water." "Good eye," Jack said. "Old sailors used to call them Neptune's dogs." After an hour watching the seals, Jack steered us into deeper waters. "This is where the whales feed," he explained, slowing the boat. "Now it's just patience and luck." And luck was on our side. We sipped coffee and swapped childhood stories until Jack suddenly pointed. "There," he shouted, handing me the binoculars. At first, I only saw a puff of spray in the distance. Then, rising out of the water, a massive humpback whale appeared, curving its enormous body before vanishing again. its tail waving goodbye as it slipped into the deep. My hands shook. "Oh my God," I whispered. "It's beautiful." Not long after, 3 whales surfaced together, likely a mother and her calves gliding in perfect unison. At one point, one of them leapt completely out of the water, crashing back down with an explosion of spray. Tears streamed down my face, not from sadness, but from pure awe. I felt small, connected, and humbled all at once. Jack held me close, without saying a word. He didn't need to. By the time we returned to the harbor, the day had changed me. Not in some dramatic way, but gently, like the tide reshaping the shore. That night, back in my trailer, I wrote in my journal, "Today I saw whales giants that have roamed these waters since before humans made fire. Cancer showed me how fragile life is, but the whales showed me how little that fragility matters in the grand sweep of time. We are only a breath, a blink, but what a gift it is to be part of that blink." I thought of Michael then, and the truth he now carried about his real father. I had feared it would break us, but seeing those whales helped me see it differently. His story, my story, all of it's just part of a larger current we can't always see or control. Like the whales following paths written deep in the ocean, maybe we're all just being carried by unseen tides. Sarah said Michael felt both pain and relief. I understand that now. There's freedom in letting yourself float instead of fighting the current. Tomorrow, I'll write to him, not to beg forgiveness, though I know I hurt him, but to share my side of the story, the one that belongs to both of us now. After that, I'll keep moving forward with Jack, and when the time comes, I'll keep going alone, trusting the current to take me where I need to be. Later that night, I posted one of the whale photos on Instagram. I wrote, "Today I saw giants in the sea, and realized how small our worries really aren't, yet how grand it is to worry, to love, to lose, and to find." A minute later, a notification popped up. Michael had liked my photo. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't a reunion, but it was a beginning. For someone like me, with only so much time left, beginnings were more than enough. Martha's Vineyard in July looked like a postcard of summer white sandy beaches, little pastel houses with peeling paint, and sailboats gliding across the horizon like brushstrokes on blue canvas. Years ago, the old me before the diagnosis, before all these revelations, would have rolled her eyes and called the place pretentious. But now, sitting in a faded beach chair outside the cottage Jack and I had rented, I saw it differently. "More lemonade?" Jack asked, holding up the sweating pitcher. "Yes, please," I said, handing him my glass. "With this heat, I'll drink the whole thing." We'd been on the island for 4 days. My trailer was still parked on the mainland, and Jack's boat sat in the town harbor. The cottage cost far too much this time of year, but we let ourselves splurge. It had a view of the beach and, best of all, a shower that didn't feel like a campground chore. "Any news?" Jack asked gently. He didn't need to explain. He meant Michael. I shook my head and tugged at the wide straw hat shading my face. "Nothing yet. Maybe tomorrow." The mail's slow here. It had been almost 2 weeks since I mailed him that letter, 10 handwritten pages spilling out 40 years of secrets, half-truths, and the things I never dared say aloud. I told him about Robert, about marrying Harold in a rush, about the silent agreement Harold and I had made never to speak of Michael's paternity. I wrote about how much Harold loved him anyway, maybe even more because of it, and at the end, I told him about my diagnosis and my wish to make peace before it's too late. Sarah said the letter arrived. Michael had it in his hands, but since then, silence. "He'll respond when he's ready," Jack said, setting down his book. "And what if he never is?" I asked softly. "What if I run out of time first?" Jack's eyes held mine. "You did your part. You gave him the truth. The rest isn't yours to control." I knew he was right. Teaching, parenting, even being a wife, I'd spent decades believing hard work and determination could shape every outcome. Now my body, my family, and even time itself had shown me otherwise. Control was mostly an illusion. "I'm going for a swim," I said, adjusting the deep blue swimsuit Jack had bought me, claiming it matched my eyes. At 67, I never imagined I'd wear something like it. But today, I didn't care. "Want company?" he asked. "Not this time. I need a few minutes alone." He nodded knowingly. The water was perfect, cool enough to soothe the heat, but gentle, not shocking. I swam past the small waves and floated on my back, letting the sea hold me. Above me, the sky was such a fierce blue it almost hurt to look at. A few thin clouds drifted lazily, carried by the same breeze brushing my face. I closed my eyes, felt the sun on my skin, and listened to the rhythm of the waves, like an echo of my own heartbeat. I thought of my children, of Michael most of all. I thought of Harold, the life we'd built imperfect but real. I thought of Robert, who never knew he had a son, whose brief presence had changed everything. And I thought of Jack, this unexpected gift at the end of my journey. A man who didn't demand promises, who wasn't afraid of my sickness, who saw me not just the mother, not just the patient, but Eleanor in all her messy, complicated wholeness. When I came back to shore, Jack's chair was empty. Instead, someone else stood there. My breath caught in my chest. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair now streaked with gray. Michael. He wore sunglasses and a simple t-shirt from his Boston restaurant. Callahan's his hands were stuffed into the pockets of his khaki shorts, his posture tight. I wrapped myself in a towel and walked toward him slowly, my heart pounding. Up close, I noticed how much he had changed, thinner, more tired, the lines on his face carved deeper than before. Michael, I whispered when we were finally You came. Sarah gave me the address, he said, his voice steady but restrained. We sat together on the beach, the sound of waves and gulls filling the silence between us. He broke it first. I got your letter, he said quietly. I nodded, knowing he must have read it more than once, the way he always did when something mattered. Then came the question I wasn't ready for. Why didn't you tell me about the cancer on the 4th of July? I told him I had tried, that I even had the test results with me that day. But before I could find the right moment, I slammed the door on him instead. He slipped off his sunglasses, his tired, red eyes reminding me so much of Robert's that it made my chest ache. It wasn't your fault, he said, shaking his head the way his father used to. We sat side by side in the beach chairs, staring at the ocean. Somehow it was easier that way, not having to face each other directly. I'm angry, he said at last. Angry about the lie, but also about the years of pretending. He spoke of all the times he had asked why he didn't look like his dad, and I had brushed it off with excuses about family traits. Every word was true, and every word stung. I didn't try to defend myself. He went on, saying that deep down, he had always known something was off. Even the way Harold looked at him distant, almost like he was guarding something that didn't fully belong to him. He loved you, I said quickly, my voice breaking. More than you know. Michael nodded. I know that now. That's what makes it so hard. If he had been a bad father, I could just hate him, and you, and move on. But he was good. Not perfect, but good. And now I have to hold both versions of him in my heart. When he finally asked why I was telling him everything now, I gave him the answer I had been dreading. Because I'm dying. 6 to 8 months, they said. That was 2 months ago. His eyes closed, his breath heavy, as though the words knocked the air out of him. I told him I wasn't seeking treatment. I wanted quality time, not just more time. He nodded slowly, trying to take it in. Then, with the faintest trace of humor, he teased me about selling the house, buying a trailer, and posting Instagram photos like a teenager. I smiled, admitting that after years of being the proper wife and responsible teacher, I was finally learning to live for myself, even if it was late in the game. He asked about Jack, and I explained that we were simply sharing this moment in life. He was a widower who understood loss, someone who wasn't asking for promises I couldn't give. Michael grew thoughtful, then surprised me by saying he had found Robert's family, his half-brother in Chicago, a professor with kids of his own. He hadn't reached out yet but was considering it. I told him he had every right, though it would be just as much of a shock for his brother as it had been for him. The heaviness softened for a while, as we talked about safer things. He told me the restaurant had won a Michelin star, and I cheered for him, reminding him of the hollandaise sauce he perfected at 16, the one Harold proudly photographed. But the mention of Harold pulled us back to the past. Michael's voice softened when he said Harold had bought him his first set of knives, encouraging him to be a chef, not a doctor. Unlike you, he added, the hurt's still there. Unlike me, I admitted. I made a lot of mistakes, Michael. The biggest was lying about who your father was. But through it all, not once, not for a second, did I stop loving you. His reply didn't come right away. And when it did, his voice trembled with emotion. The kids kept asking about me. Tommy wondered why Grandma was posting beach pictures instead of baking cookies with him. Michael told him I was on an adventure and would come back soon. I didn't correct the lie. We both knew my return, if it happened at all, would be brief. Then Michael surprised me, looking out at the ocean. He said he wanted to meet Jack, the man who had gotten his mother posting whale photos on Instagram. I laughed, relieved by the lightness in his voice. You'll like him. I promised. He's a good cook, too, in his own way. Michael stood and helped me up. I'm not ready to forgive you, he admitted. I don't know if I ever will, but I'm ready to try to understand. My heart softened. That's all I can ask, I said. When we reached the cottage, Jack was on the porch pretending to read, but his sharp eyes had already noticed us. He stood with a cautious smile. You must be Michael. Your mom talks about you all the time. Michael shook his hand with a small grin. Hopefully not all terrible. Jack chuckled. Only about your temper in the kitchen. Apparently, you're a tyrant with the pans. That broke the tension. Michael laughed. A sound I hadn't heard in so long, it nearly made me cry. Only with people who can't tell the difference between browning and burning, he teased. The two men studied each other like strangers, feeling out the edges of trust. Then Jack's smile turned genuine. I caught some fish this morning. Want to show me how a Michelin-starred chef would cook them? Michael's face finally lit up. It would be my pleasure. Watching them walk into the cottage kitchen together, I felt a wave of gratitude so strong, it nearly knocked me over. This wasn't a happy ending. Life rarely gives us those, but it was a beginning. For me, with only a handful of pages left in my story, that was enough. That night, under the Martha's Vineyard stars, we shared a meal. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences, painful memories, but it was real, and we were together. Families, like tides, find their way back, even if changed by storms, damaged, reshaped, transformed, but never fully broken. By the end of August, the air shifted. Tourists thinned out, nights grew cooler, and a golden sadness seemed to float above the Rhode Island coast. I parked my trailer at a small campground in Newport, overlooking the sea. Jack had left for a couple of weeks to help his daughter move. We said goodbye simply, without tears, knowing time was too precious for dramatics. I'll be back before you know it, he promised, kissing my forehead. Try not to fall in love with another bearded sailor while I'm gone. No promises, I teased. You know how irresistible we 67-year-old women with terminal cancer are. He laughed, that deep laugh I loved, then drove off, leaving me alone for the first time in months. The quiet felt strange, not bad, just different. Jack had become such a steady comfort that his absence left me unsure of what to do with the empty space. What do you do when your days are numbered, when every one of them is precious and counted? I decided to walk Newport's famous cliff walk, a trail winding between grand mansions and the roaring Atlantic. The sky was brilliantly blue, clouds painted like brushstrokes across it. I had gone about a mile when my phone rang. Sarah, sweetheart, I answered, sitting on a bench overlooking the crashing waves. Her voice was unusually upbeat. Mom, are you sitting down? I literally just sat down. I said, what is it? Michael called, she said. He contacted your half-brother in Chicago, James Callahan. My heart sped up, and they talked for 3 hours. James said his father Robert once mentioned a woman from Boston, and a choice he made, but it never made sense until now. He was shocked, of course, but also curious. He's sending photos of Robert to Michael. And Mom, she paused, her voice softening. He wants to meet you. Tears filled my eyes. After all these years, Robert Sunaman I had known so briefly and so deeply wanted to meet me. Does he know about my situation? I asked quietly. Yes, Sarah said gently. Michael told him, and James's wife is an oncologist. They understood what 4 to 6 months really meant, and still, James wanted to see me, maybe even more because of it. Sarah's voice was soft, careful. He said he's felt like something was missing his whole life, like a piece of his family puzzle never fit. Now, finally, things make sense about his father, and even about himself. I asked how Michael felt about all this. Sarah hesitated. It's complicated for him, of course, but I think it's freeing too. Like he finally has permission to be different from Harold, to embrace the part of himself that always felt out of place in our family. I sat quietly, the sound of waves crashing below us reminding me how small human dramas are against the sea. Then Sarah told me James wanted to come visit next weekend. He and his wife, Karen. So soon? I asked. Mom, she said gently, time isn't something we have a lot of. The truth of it hit me against something I could sometimes ignore, on good days when the pain was low and the energy just enough to explore. Of course, I said, tell him he's welcome. Actually, Sarah added, Michael suggested all of us should go. Him, me, Alan, the kids, a real family reunion, the first, and maybe the only one with everyone together. For a moment I couldn't speak. My son, who had once shut me out, was now planning a gathering to bring us all under one roof. I'd love that. I managed at last. But my trailer's far too small. Sarah laughed. Michael already rented a house near your campground, big enough for everyone, including James and Karen. He thought of everything. You know how meticulous he is, just like you. I could hear the smile in her voice. After we hung up, I sat on the bench a long time, staring at the restless ocean. Life has a way of surprising you right when you think you've mapped it out, like the sea. Steady from afar but ever-changing when you look closer. The week flew by with preparations. I messaged Jack, told him about the reunion. He offered to cut his trip short, but I insisted this was something I needed to do with my family. On Friday afternoon, I pulled up to the rental house, a tall, 3-story Victorian with a wraparound porch and wide views of the ocean. Michael was already outside, overseeing boxes of fresh seafood, organic vegetables, and fine wine. You're not planning to feed an army, are you? I teased. He hugged me briefly, still a little stiff, but better than the slammed door in July. Just making sure we have options, he said. Soon after, Sarah and her family arrived. Tommy, at 10, ran to me full speed. Grandma, did you really swim with whales? The pictures on Mom's phone are real, right? I laughed, hugging him tight. Not exactly with them, but close enough to see their eyes. They're bigger than cars. You know, Ember, 13 and balancing between childhood and teenagehood, hugged me more reservedly, but her eyes lit up when I told her I'd picked up a professional camera in Newport. Can we take sunset photos later? She asked. Perfect idea, I said. Alan, ever the kind and steady son-in-law, hugged me warmly. You look wonderful, Eleanor. Life on the road suits you. He didn't say what we both knew, that I was thinner now, my skin carrying that translucent look of illness. Some truths are better carried in silence. At 6 sharp, James and Karen arrived. When James stepped through the door, my breath caught. He looked so much like Robert, those same intense eyes, the same shape of face, even the slight tilt of his head as he spoke. Mrs. Thompson, he said in a voice surprisingly gentle for such a tall man. It's surreal to finally meet you. Please, call me Eleanor, I replied, unable to look away. It felt like seeing a ghost Robert as he might have been if he'd lived to this age. Karen, elegant with her silver bob and calm presence, shook my hand firmly. It's an honor, she said simply, but her doctor's eyes told me she saw everything: my illness, my fragility. It was the same look the Boston doctors had given me when they explained my prognosis. She knew exactly what she was seeing. Dinner that night felt almost magical. Michael cooked like he always does, turning fresh seafood into dishes so good they could win awards. The wine matched perfectly, and the dessert, sweet caramelized fruit, was so delicious, even serious. No nonsense. Karen closed her eyes to savor it. What surprised me most was how easily everyone talked, considering the complicated history between us. James shared stories about his work in physics at the University of Chicago, and mentioned his 3 grown kids, my grandchildren, I'll never get to really know. Karen spoke about her work helping sick children, while Sarah and Alan talked about their latest projects. I kept watching Michael and James, 2 men who had just found out they were family. The way they studied each other, noticing little similarities, felt like watching pieces of a puzzle click together right in front of me. After dinner, everyone moved to the porch with drinks, but James asked me to walk with him in the garden. The night was calm, the stars clear above us, and the sound of waves in the distance made it feel almost like a dream. He talked about Boston, the city he missed, even though he had spent most of his life in Chicago. I told him Robert had always lived life with intensity, even in short bursts. James smiled. Robert's son's smile, and agreed. He said Robert loved my mother deeply. Looking at me seriously, he added, he would have been proud of Michael, and heartbroken not to know him. I assured him Harold had been a wonderful father, and that Michael had been lucky in his own way. James gently replied that Harold must have been remarkable, accepting and raising a child who wasn't his by blood. We walked in silence for a while before James brought up my illness. Karen says you declined treatment, he said carefully. I nodded and explained that I wanted quality of life, not just more days of suffering. He understood his father had made the same choice. He even admitted he admired how Karen, as a doctor, respected my decision fully. Talking about her, he smiled with warmth, saying that after nearly 40 years together, he still found her fascinating. Then James asked the question I had asked myself for decades. Do you regret it? Not telling Robert, choosing Harold? I admitted I didn't have a simple answer. I regretted the secrecy and the pain it had caused Michael, but not my life with Harold. flawed as it was, or the man Michael grew into. And now, meeting James, I couldn't regret the life Robert had lived with the family he built. James nodded, saying wisely that life rarely gives us perfect choices, just imperfect paths. I teased him that he sounded more like a philosopher than a scientist. And he laughed, saying physics was basically philosophy with math. When we returned inside, everyone was looking through old photo albums Sarah had brought. Michael and Amber were laughing over a picture from a camping trip where Michael had tried to build a raft and ended up with 10 stitches in his knee. "And you still swore it would have worked if we had more time," Sarah teased. I sat with them, watching his birthdays, graduations, and vacations flipped by in faded photographs. Tommy noticed there weren't many pictures of me and asked if I was always the one behind the camera. Sarah explained I never liked being photographed, that I preferred watching instead of being watched. Michael chuckled, showing my Instagram on his phone. "That's changed now," he said. "She's practically an inf—" Everyone laughed, and I laughed too, feeling grateful for that strange, perfect moment, messy and unlikely, and that's what made it precious. Later, after everyone went to bed, I stayed on the porch watching the moonlight on the ocean. Michael came out with 2 glasses of wine. "I shouldn't be drinking with my meds," I said, but I took a sip anyway. "A sip won't kill you," he said, then caught himself and looked worried. I started to laugh, and after a shocked beat, he laughed with me. We hadn't shared that kind of laughter in years. When we settled down, he asked, "How are you really doing?" I told him the truth. The pain meds help most of the time, so I have good days and bad days, and today is a good day. He nodded, staring into his glass, and said meeting James felt surreal, like looking in a warped mirror and finally recognizing parts of myself. I told him they're alike in ways beyond looks, and that part of me wanted to be angry and resentful, but another part felt free to be myself for the first time. Michael said I'd always been myself, and that's what made me special. Then he surprised me. I met someone, Elisa, a sommelier, at the restaurant. I was genuinely happy for him. His marriage to Diane ended 2 years ago in a bitter way that left scars. He said Eliza is direct and honest, exactly what he needs after years of half-truths. The irony wasn't lost on me, my son, hurt by secrets, now wanting total honesty. He wants me to meet her when I pass through Boston. We both felt the unasked question. Where do I want to be when the end comes? I told him I wasn't sure. Part of me wants to keep traveling. Another part wants to stay near them. Jack says it's my choice, and he'll be with me either way. Michael looked at me closely and asked, "Do you love him?" That stopped me. Love is a careful word for me, but I tried to explain. It's different from what I felt for your father and for Robert. It's simple, present, and without the old expectations. So, yes, I said slowly, and Michael smiled. He put his hand over mine and told me he was proud of me for choosing this journey and for facing the truth. Tears came, warm on my cheeks and cooled by the night air. "Thank you," I whispered. His hand felt like a bridge over all the old, complicated years. "We won't waste the time that's left," he promised. Looking at the dark sea full of stars, holding my son's hand, I felt a peace I'd been searching for. Time had always been limited, but now I finally knew how I wanted to use it. In October, Bar Harbor and Acadia are an explosion of color, trees in reds, oranges, and golds that shine against the ocean, and the air is sharp and smells of apples and salt. It seemed like the right place to say goodbye. My condition had worsened over the past weeks. Pain that used to come and go was now almost constant, and fatigue wrapped around me so I could only do a few things each day. Still, I insisted on this last trip north to finish what I started. Jack stayed by my side, as he had since coming back from Portland in September. His boat was docked in the quiet harbor, and the trailer sat at a campground with mountain views. "Are you sure you want to do this today?" he asked, helping me into a heavy coat. "We can wait until tomorrow." "No," I said. "Today is perfect. It might rain tomorrow." We both knew it wasn't just about the weather. Good days were rare now, and when they came, I wanted to be fully awake and present for them. Today was one of those rare, perfect days I couldn't waste. So we went up to Cadillac Mountain. Jack grabbed the small backpack with water, snacks, and my pills, and we drove the winding road to the highest point on the East Coast. He drove slowly so I could drink in every view, the Atlantic stretching out to the right like a big blue blanket scattered with jewel-like islands. I remembered the brochure that said this is the first place in the U.S. to see the sunrise, and Jack joked we should come back tomorrow, though we both knew tomorrow might be too much. At the summit I was breathless. not only from the cancer slowly filling my lungs, but also from the sight itself. Miles of rolling, colorful woods, islands outlined against the sea, sunlight flashing on the water. Jack found a quiet spot away from the crowds, spread a blanket on weather-smoothed rocks, and helped me sit with pillows to ease my aching back. "Last picnic with a view," he said, and I smiled back. "The best picnic." We ate in a peaceful silence, watching two hawks lazily circle above us. They made riding the wind look easy. Afterward, Jack pulled out the little leather notebook I always recognize. "I brought your journal," he said. I ran my fingers over the worn cover and thought of the pages full of my handwriting notes from this trip. Reflections, letters to people who might never read them. Then I surprised him. "I was thinking of giving this to you." He looked taken aback. My journal was private. I told him yes, but with one condition. He could only read it after I was gone. He took it gently, like it was something fragile and precious, and promised. I handed him a thick sealed envelope addressed by hand. "This is for Sarah," I said. I had last letters ready for Sarah, for Michael, for each grandchild, and one for James. Jack shook his head with a small laugh. "You really thought of everything." We both laughed, and for a moment, the pain eased into the background. Everyone would arrive tomorrow. Michael, Sarah, and their families. James and Karen and Michael had rented a seaside cottage where we'd all be together. I called it the final gathering. Everyone understood why, even if no one said it out loud. "It'll be chaotic," I said with a weak smile. "Too many strong personalities under one roof. But yes, it would be good." Then I found the courage to say the thing I'd put off. "Jack, we need to talk about what happens after." He tensed, but stayed calm. I told him I wanted to stay at the cottage with family when the end came, and he nodded slowly, already prepared. Sarah had talked to a local doctor for house calls. Karen was an oncologist and could help, and they would make sure I was comfortable. The word comfortable sat heavy between us, meaning a gentler way to die, free from too much pain. I asked him quietly what he would do. He looked at the endless blue horizon and said he would stay as long as I wanted. After that, he thought he'd go back to the sea, the place that always brought him peace. "I'll miss you," I told Jack, knowing those simple words could never capture just how much he had come to mean to me. "And I'll miss you," he said, squeezing my hand, "but I won't regret a single moment, not even the ending." We sat together like that, hands entwined, staring out at the world below as the sun painted the autumn hills in fiery reds and golds, like nature itself was putting on a farewell show just for me. Finally, I admitted what I'd been carrying since the diagnosis. The first feeling had been panic, not only about dying, but about all the things I'd never done, the places I'd never seen, the experiences I'd kept pushing off for some day that never came. Jack didn't interrupt, just traced circles on my palm as I went on. "But these past few months," I said, "I've lived more than in decades of so-called good health. I saw whales. I swam in oceans I'd once been too afraid to step into. I made peace with my son. I met family I never knew I had. And," I paused, looking at him, "I found love when I least expected it. Love that made these last days shine." His eyes shimmered with tears as he smiled. "You changed my days too. After Catherine died, I thought I'd never feel this kind of connection again. Then there you were, battling a lobster in Portland." We both laughed, remembering how out of place I'd looked while he was completely at ease. "We're an unlikely pair," I said. "The best ones usually are," he replied. As the sun melted into pink and orange hues, he helped me up, steadying me against the wind. "One last picture," he suggested, pulling out his phone. "For Instagram," I teased. "For us," he said. He wrapped an arm firmly around my waist and snapped the shot. The two of us smiling against a blazing sky, my short white hair blowing in the wind, pain forgotten in that instant. It was a picture of life, not loss. The next morning was harder. I woke aching, the night's pain unrelenting despite the pills. Jack was already in the trailer's tiny kitchen, making tea. "Morning," he said warmly, bringing me a steaming cup. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was hit by a train," I admitted, struggling to sit with his help. "But yesterday was worth it." He nodded, handing me my pills. We both knew I was fading fast. The Boston doctor had warned that once the decline began, it would be quick. "Your family will be here in a few hours," Jack said, checking his watch. "Do you want me to take you to the cottage now so you can rest first?" "Yes, please. And you, are you coming to—" He hesitated. "I think today should be just for family. You all have things to share, things to say. I'll be nearby, on the boat or in the trailer. Just call if you need me." That was Jack, always respectful, never pushing where he didn't belong. Your family too, I told him softly. His eyes softened with emotion. Thank you. But tomorrow, if you're feeling up to it, I'll join for dinner. Michael mentioned lobster. I smiled. If anyone can impress me with lobster, it's a Michelin-starred chef. The cottage Michael had rented was breathtaking, bigger and brighter than the one at Martha's Vineyard, with huge windows that looked straight out to the sea, a wraparound deck, and a private little beach. Jack made sure I was settled into the ground floor bedroom, every medication neatly arranged within reach. Are you sure you'll be okay until they arrive? He asked, clearly reluctant to leave. Absolutely. I'll probably nap. The trip wore me out more than I thought. He leaned down, kissed my cheek gently, his beard brushing my skin. Call if you need anything, anything at all. Then he was gone, and silence wrapped around me. Through the windows, I watched the gray-blue ocean. Waves topped with white foam creeping closer with the tide, steady, unstoppable, like time itself. My eyelids grew heavy, the rhythm of the sea pulling me under. Mom, we're here. Sarah's voice broke through the haze, pulling me back awake. When I opened my eyes, my daughter was leaning over me, her face showing both worry and relief. Sorry, I mumbled, still a little disoriented. I think I slept longer than I planned. She smiled softly. That's okay. You needed it. Slowly, I began noticing the sounds of the house voices chatting in the kitchen, the clatter of pots and pans, footsteps going up and down the stairs. The family had arrived. With Sarah's help, I got out of my pajamas and into a comfortable outfit she had laid out. I brushed my short hair, added a touch of lipstick, small things, but they made me feel more like myself and less like a patient. Michael appeared at the door wearing an apron over his shirt. Sleeping Beauty finally woke up, he teased as he hugged me gently. Just in time for lunch. It wasn't anything fancy, just salad and sandwiches, but it sounded perfect. I leaned on him as we slowly walked to the living room, and my heart swelled at what I saw. The house was full. My whole family had gathered, filling every corner. Tommy and James, teenagers, were sprawled on the floor with a board game. Amber sat beside James' oldest granddaughter, laughing over something on her laptop. Alan and Karen chatted on the couch while James helped set the table. Grandma, Tommy shouted as soon as he saw me. He jumped up, then slowed down, clearly remembering he was supposed to be gentle. One by one, everyone came over with hugs, kisses, and soft smiles that spoke louder than words. No one mentioned how different I looked since they'd last seen me, but I caught the quick flicker of surprise in the younger kids' eyes. Lunch was cheerful, even with the heaviness that lingered in the background. Michael's meal was simple but delicious, and conversation flowed easily. School stories from the kids, work updates from the adults, plans for the week. I thought we could go to the park tomorrow, Michael suggested, scooping more salad onto his plate. There are some easy trails we could all enjoy. Everyone knew what he meant by easy trails, paths that I could handle. That sounds wonderful, I said, even though I wasn't sure I'd have the strength for it. After lunch, the younger ones ran down to the beach, while the adults spread around the house. Michael helped me settle on the porch overlooking the ocean, tucking a light blanket over my legs. I'm dying, not freezing, I joked. He froze, then chuckled nervously. Your humor's always been sharper than I can handle. Liar, I said, smirking. You got it from me and Robert too, apparently. Michael sat beside me, watching the kids on the sand. Tommy found a crab, he pointed out, smiling as the others crowded around it. Then, quieter, he said, James told me stories about Robert. Apparently, he once made chili so spicy the neighbors thought it was a gas leak and called the fire department. I laughed, instantly picturing it. That sounds like him. He always did everything with intensity. Michael nodded. Like you. His voice was calm, not resentful, just stating the truth. My whole life, I felt like something was missing, he continued, eyes fixed on the children, like I wasn't complete. But now, knowing James, knowing about Robert, it feels like I finally have permission to be fully myself. I reached for his hand. You always had that permission, Michael. You just didn't realize it. He turned to me, his eyes, Robert's eyes, shining with emotion. Eliza's coming tomorrow, he said suddenly. I want you to meet her before. He trailed off. Before it's too late, I finished softly. I'd love to meet her. He looked away, a little embarrassed. She's nervous. Says it's a lot of pressure meeting her mother-in-law for the first and last time all at once. Mother-in-law am I teased. His cheeks flushed like a boy's. Not officially, but I've had the ring for 2 weeks. I was waiting for the right moment. My heart filled with joy. She must be someone special. He nodded. She is totally different from Diane. More like, he paused, realizing something. More like Jack, actually. Honest, straightforward, no games. She sounds perfect for you, I said. His smile faltered. It's just a shame you won't have much time to really know her. Maybe not in this life, I said gently, but maybe in some other way. Michael, never one for spiritual ideas, surprised me by squeezing my hand instead of brushing it off. I liked that thought, he whispered, that you'll still be here somehow, watching, seeing your grandchildren grow, seeing this family carry on because of you. That afternoon moved along gently, with different family members sitting with me on the porch, each bringing a little piece of their world to share. Sarah talked about her work at the university and how she might soon become department chair. James shared his early retirement dreams, imagining trips he and Karen would take. Alan showed me photos of an old book he was restoring, his face glowing with pride. As the sun dipped low, Karen Ever the doctor sat down beside me to check my medicine and asked softly, "How's the pain today?" "Manageable," I admitted, though we both knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. She nodded, her eyes full of understanding. "I'm here, if you need anything." Between your doctor's visits, her steady presence comforted me more than I could say. I thanked her sincerely. Then, after a pause, she asked carefully, "How much do they know? Michael, Sarah, the kids about what's ahead?" I told her the truth. The adults understood the basics, but the children only knew I was very sick and had come to say goodbye. She offered to help me explain more when the time was right, but I told her, not today. Today, I just want to be with them. She nodded gently. Dinner that night was one I'll never forget. Everyone gathered around the big oak table, candles flickering even though the sky was still bright. The adults sipped wine, the kids had sodas, and Michael served his famous seafood risotto, the dish that once made his name in Boston. Laughter and stories filled the room, memories overlapping, voices blending together. I sat quietly at times, simply soaking it all in. This messy, beautiful family, born from choices and chances long ago, all here, together. When the plates were cleared, Michael stood with his glass, his voice unsteady. "I'd like to make a toast," he said, "to my mother, Eleanor Thompson, extraordinary teacher, terrible cook." "Hey," I protested, making everyone laugh. "Surprisingly good sailor, late blooming Instagram star, and the bravest woman I know." One by one, others joined in. James raised his glass to Eleanor, who reunited families who didn't even know they were broken apart. Sarah's voice trembled with tears. To Mom, who showed us it's never too late to rediscover who we are. From the doorway, Amber added, to Grandma, who proved even old people can be cool, making everyone laugh again. Karen closed it gently, to Eleanor, who reminds us that what matters isn't the years in our life, but the life in our years. Together, they all lifted their glasses. To Eleanor, I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. They slid down my cheeks freely, but I didn't wipe them away. They weren't sad tears, not really. They were gratitude, for love, for family, for this moment. Later, when the house was finally quiet, I messaged Jack. "Perfect day with the family. Tired but happy. Eliza is coming tomorrow. Are you still coming for dinner?" His reply came instantly. "Wouldn't miss it for the world. Rest well, my Eleanor." I fell asleep to the steady sound of the ocean outside the window, the waves rolling in and out, rocking me like an old lullaby. Life went on, and for now, I was still part of it. The days that followed blurred together, sweet moments stitched with longer stretches of pain and exhaustion. I met Eliza at last, a lively woman with curly red hair and a laugh that filled the room. I saw immediately why Michael loved her. She didn't treat me with pity. Instead, she pulled me into bright conversations about books and shared funny stories about Michael at work. Jack joined us often for meals and small outings. He and James bonded quickly over their love of the sea, while Michael found joy in talking cooking with another true chef. But on the fourth day, the tide shifted. I woke up unable to get out of bed. The pain had become an unstoppable force, pressing down even through the strongest medicine. Dr. Harmon came by and adjusted my medication, his kind eyes quietly telling me what his words didn't need to. Time was running short. When I asked him directly how long I had left, he answered with honesty, "Days, maybe a week." I nodded. I already knew it deep down. "Thank you for being honest," I whispered. After that, the family stayed close, taking turns at my side. When I was awake, they read aloud to me. When I was too tired for words, they simply held my hand. Jack never left for long, always close, quietly anticipating what I needed before I even asked. On the sixth day, as rain tapped softly against the windows, I asked to speak to each of them, one by one. These were the final talks, the goodbyes that needed to be spoken while I still had enough clarity to say what mattered most. Sarah came first, my sensible daughter, my peacemaker. I took her hands in mine, so fragile now, the bones visible beneath my thin skin. Take care of your brother, I told her, but not the way you always have, carrying the weight of his feelings. Just be his sister, be there for him. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I promise, she whispered. And Mom, I'm going to miss you so much. I know, sweetheart, I said softly. But remember what I've always told my students about great literary characters: they never truly leave us. They live on in us, shaping who we are. And I'll live on in you, Sarah, in the books we love, in our shared memories, and in the values I've passed down. With James, my words were shorter, but no less sincere. I'm sorry I never knew your father better, I told him, and that he never met Michael. But I'm so grateful to have met you. His deep voice, so much like Robert's, carried a weight of love. The feeling is mutual. You gave us a priceless gift, completing our story, filling in the pieces we didn't even know were missing. With the children, I kept things light. I told happy stories, reminded them to keep learning, to follow their dreams, to be kind. Tommy made me promise I'd watch his first professional baseball game from up there. Amber shyly asked if she could use my old Leica camera. It's yours now, I said, squeezing her hand. Use it to capture the world in your own way. By the time Michael came in, night had fallen and the rain outside had grown heavier, drumming against the windows like a heartbeat. He sat beside me, a forgotten cup of tea cooling in his hands. So, he began, his voice trembling, I guess this is where we say goodbye. I don't like goodbyes, I whispered. I prefer see you soon. A faint smile tugged at his lips. Always the optimist, realist, I corrected gently. No one knows what comes after this, Michael, but I believe love doesn't just disappear. He nodded, looking down, then reached into his pocket. I have something for you, he said quietly. He pulled out a small velvet box. I was saving this for your birthday. Inside was a pearl ring, circled by tiny diamonds. It belonged to my grandmother, Harold's mother. He gave it to me before he died, told me to give it to someone special when the time was right. Tears filled my eyes. Michael, but he shook his head. I want Eliza to have it. But first, I wanted you to see it, to know I'm carrying on his legacy. The man who raised me, the man who loved me without condition. Tears slid down my cheeks as I whispered, he would be so proud of you, so proud of the man you've become. Michael's voice grew thick with emotion. Even knowing everything now, Evan, after meeting James and learning about Robert, Harold will always be my father. He was the one who taught me to ride a bike, who stayed up late helping with science projects, who gave me my first real set of knives when other dads wanted their sons to be doctors or lawyers. He loved you more than anything in this world, I told him firmly. Never doubt that. Michael took my hand carefully, mindful of the 4 lines. His grip was warm, steady. It took me a long time to see it, but now I understand why you kept the secret so long. It wasn't just for you, or for him. It was for me. To protect me. I swallowed hard. I did what I thought was best. I didn't always get it right. I made plenty of mistakes as a mother, as a wife, as a person, like all of us, he said gently. We sat in silence for a while, the rain filling the space between us, until finally he asked, almost out of nowhere, do you remember that time in Cape Cod? When I was about 7, I got stuck in that big tree by the beach. I climbed up so high and then got too scared to come down. I still smile when I think about it. Your father wanted to call the fire department, but I said, no, you needed to learn to solve your own problems, and he stood under the tree telling me exactly where to put each foot and where to hold on. He must have been there for hours, 3 hours and 27 minutes, I corrected. I timed it. Michael laughed softly and said I never gave up on him. Not once, I said, squeezing his hand with the little strength I had left. I never will. He leaned in, kissed my forehead, and a tear fell onto my cheek. I love you, Mom, he whispered, with all the mess and the mistakes. I love you exactly as you are. And I love you, my son, I answered. I always have. I always will. When Michael left, wiping his eyes, Jack came quietly into the room and sat in the chair by my bed. We didn't need many words. We had learned to talk with looks and comfortable silences over the months. "How are you feeling?" he asked as he gently fixed my pillow. "Like someone who is dying," I said honestly, "but peaceful, more peaceful than I ever expected." He took my hand. His rough, calloused fingers felt like home. "You changed my life, Eleanor Thompson," he said simply. "These months with you were a gift I never expected. We're two lucky old souls." I tried to smile through the pain. He agreed, eyes wet, like an unexpected current that changes a boat's course. My voice was weak when I called, "Jack, when the time comes, when I'm really leaving, I want you to be here, you and the children." He nodded, choked up, and at last promised, "I'll be here until the very end. And after," I said, "I want you to go back to the sea. Take that second chance. Go to the places we never went together. Live every day like it matters, because it does." He promised he would, his voice thick. "And when you're out on the ocean with the wind and the gulls and the wide sky, think of me. Every day," he corrected. "I'll think of you every day, Eleanor." The rain outside had slowed to a soft sound like a lullaby, and the pain that had been with me for weeks felt farther away, like I was looking at it through a mist. "Could you do me one last favor?" I asked. "Anything," he said. "Open the window a little. I want to hear the ocean." Jack opened it a few inches, and cool night air came in, smelling of salt and sea, and I could hear waves far below. "Better?" he asked. "Perfect," I sighed. And that night I fell asleep to the ocean, and Jack holding my hand tight. I dreamed of whales, of lighthouses blinking in the dark, of long empty beaches under starry skies. The next 2 days were a blur of pain medicine, sleep, and short clear moments when family sat with me. Sarah reading Jane Austen softly, Michael adjusting my pillows with careful hands, Jack just being there like a steady anchor. On the morning of the third day I woke up suddenly clearer. The pain, a low hum and a strange rush of strength. The doctors call it a terminal rally. "I want to go to the beach," I told Karen when she checked my vitals. She looked surprised and then nodded. "I'll see what we can do." An hour later, wrapped in blankets and propped with pillows, I was taken out to the deck that looks over the beach. The sky was bright blue and the ocean glittered in the autumn sun like it was smiling. My family stood around me, Sarah and Alan, Michael and Eliza, James and Karen, the little kids kept back close to the grown-ups, and Jack right by my side, as he'd been for months. "Isn't it beautiful?" I whispered. "Breathtaking," Sarah said as she sat down beside me. "Remember this?" I asked them, looking at each face. Not me with tubes and medicine, but us here together, looking at something bigger than any of our troubles. Michael, who was on my right, took my hand, and we all looked out at the sea. "I promise, Mom," Michael said. And the ocean filled the quiet that followed that steady coming and going of waves that had been there long before us and would be there after. I looked at the line where sky met sea and told Jack what I'd learned these months. Life is like the ocean. You can't predict it or control it. Sometimes it's calm, sometimes it's a storm, but even the hardest moments have their own kind of beauty. A seagull skimmed by and I said, "We're always changing, always a little different after each wave." Sarah squeezed my hand, tears on her cheeks. I told them I'd wasted too much time trying to control everything, trying to be the perfect wife, mother, teacher, and Michael said gently they knew I only wanted the best. I said the last lesson I learned was to let go sometimes, to stop fighting the tide and instead steer as best we can. Jack kissed my forehead and told me I'd navigated beautifully. I smiled, saying he'd been a great captain. The rest of the afternoon passed in soft talk, old memories, and small laughs that felt precious. And when the sun dipped and painted the sky in orange and pink, I told them it was a beautiful way to say goodbye. Sleep came over me like the peaceful kind you have after a full day, and I told them it was time. They moved me back inside with the utmost care, Karen checking my meds and vitals like she always did. One by one the children came to say goodnight, little kisses, "I love you," promises to remember, and when the room was quiet again it was just Michael, Sarah, and Jack. I told them they'd been my greatest adventures and my deepest joys, and I thanked Jack for giving me a second chance. He kissed me and said thank you for teaching him to sail again. Night fell, the lamp hummed softly, and the sea sang through the half-open window like an old lullaby. I felt the tide turn and a gentle pulling out to deeper water. "I'm tired," I whispered. "So tired." "Rest, Mom," Michael said, and Sarah promised they'd always be there. I felt Jack's hand steady in mine, and, with no more pain, only the sense of floating and letting go, my last clear thought was how grateful I was for this messy, wonderful family and the love that would go on after me. And then, like a wave returning to the sea, Elena Thompson finally let go. That's today's story. If it touched you, leave a like and subscribe. And don't forget, share your own life lesson in the comments below.